Hello and welcome to the Coder Kids podcast. Great to have you here today. My name is Jeff Ward. I'm the owner of Coder Kids. Visit us at coderkids.com if you want to, have your child be in a coding class or something. Or something. I guess
we got a lot of somethings. We got private tutoring.
I know, there's a lot of
we got
somethings.
Summer camps, and
I don't know why I said or something, James. That was
and some things in the works. That's why.
All right. Well, this is James. James, say hey to all your fans.
Hey.
I'm happy to be back this week because James didn't want me here last week, so he did the solo interview. Hopefully, you got to catch that with the founder of Imagicharm. And actually, this week we had planned to have an interview with our friend Rock Coder, who is a Scratch game designer, you could say.
Yeah,
I'm sure he has another job, but that's what we know him for. Yeah, because just being
he's not
Scratch
making
game
money
designer,
on Scratch. Yeah,
it would not pay the bills. And so we were planning on that, but he had some health issues. So our hearts go out to Rock Coder. Hope that you're feeling better, and we will catch him probably next week or the week after, and hope that he gets to feeling better.
Yeah, for sure. Next week we already have another guest planned, so we'll have to figure something out. But
yeah, two in 1 week.
Yeah, we could totally do that. Why not?
Yeah, get a little ahead on the podcast.
Yeah.
Well, James, what's new with you this week?
Oh, well, it's been a while since we've done a catch-up, I think. So,
yeah.
There's a good bit. Along the lines of those personal goals, I was doing, really great. And then this week, it started to not do great. Kind of like the New Year's resolutions. Yeah, it's just trying to find how to do exercise consistently and how to go to bed on time consistently and all those things. So, as far as the computer upgrades front, I've been there were a bunch of 3080 cards that went on sale yesterday and I missed all of them. I guess I didn't get the notifications. But hopefully more people are out there able to get those graphics cards.
What's the price on the 3080?
MSRP is $700. But if you want to get one of the ones that's more overclock friendly, then they can be up to $850. And then you can buy it on eBay for $1,500 right now.
Right. Yeah, I don't want to do that.
It's not worth it, people.
Still waiting on the 3070s, James. I'm waiting on the 3070.
I'm really excited. NVIDIA delayed the launch of the 3070 so that they could have more supply. I think that was the right decision because they botched both other launches. And so I'm eyeing that card as well. Maybe I could get one in between or whatever. It's still miles above, what I have now. So
right, for sure.
Yeah, other than that, I think I do want to give a quick shout out to myself for the kid-friendly game reviews. So that's live now on our channel. We've got so far the whole idea behind kid-friendly game reviews is basically, if you're at all familiar with the IMDb Parents Guide, where it basically says, hey, this movie has this kind of violence and this kind of sexual content and this kind of language, and it tells you exactly what it is so you can see instead of having to watch a 2-hour movie. So in a similar way, these videos are about 5 minutes long, and instead of having to play hours of a video game, you can just say, hey, James, what's in this game? And then I can tell you. And so we've done 20XX, Rocket League. I'm working on the Fortnite ones right now.
You did Fall Guys.
Right. So, and just like this podcast, that content is responsive. So if you have a specific game that you want to hear a review about, definitely reach out and I can do that for you. And same thing with the podcast if you want to hear about a certain topic. So
James, my question about your kid-friendly game reviews is, will you be tackling all sorts of games, even games that include adult content? Because, I think generally speaking, in my conversations with you, it seems like you kind of steer clear of maybe the most violent or games with adult content.
Yeah. So
would you make that sacrifice for the good of informing parents about what is good and what is bad?
Yeah. So I was thinking about, for instance, Doom Eternal. I mean, the whole idea was, if you go to the kid-friendly games playlist, I do want there to be at least like 4 or 5 good kid-friendly games that have a good rating, that I knew would roughly have a good rating before, rating maybe some of the more popular but a little bit more gory games. So I'm fine with playing those games and diving in and seeing what's in it. If it's completely soulless and not productive at all, I don't think I'm going to be like dwelling there, so to speak.
Well, it's funny because you
I'm
have
definitely
like lessons. You have like a lesson section in your
I
videos,
do,
and so it's
yeah.
like, what's the lesson learned from Doom Eternal? It's like, get better at first-person shooters, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny, but I think that I think there's a lot of parents who are not gamers themselves, but who maybe their child comes home from school and they're like, "Oh, mom, dad, you have to buy me this game." And at least that's the way that I was when I was a kid. And my parents didn't know what I was playing. And, I mostly just played like Blizzard games. So most of as a matter of fact, I mean, well, they're pretty harmless, but there's still some things that you could touch on in those games. But anyway, my point is,
there is one named after the devil. So, I mean, there is that. Yeah,
there's that.
Diablo.
But it's good for parents to know kind of what their kids are asking for and what their kids are playing and whatnot. So, anyway, I think it's a great feature.
So that's like personal life, business life mixed. That's where that one falls. So, yeah. And how's construction coming? I hear you're coming along. You got a new microphone today. That's great.
Got a new microphone. Hopefully the audio quality is a little bit better. Probably still not perfect, but we'll get there. But yeah, construction's coming along. I mean, honestly, I honestly haven't touched much this week except for like installing blinds in this room. And then this weekend, actually, my wife and son are going out of town, and so I'm going to have work time from like Saturday through Wednesday. And so I'm hoping that I can actually like knock out like real work instead of, I mean, there's no reason why I can't work with them here, but sometimes it's easier when you just have like that mentality of like, they're not here. I'm going to turn on a TV show and I'm just going to work like all day. So I'm hoping that I can knock out a lot. In other news, my football team, the BYU Cougars, are playing.
Oh, there we go.
They're playing the Houston Cougars, which is oddly enough also my alma mater, and so they're playing tonight at 7:30 Mountain Time.
Red versus blue, Cougs and Cougs.
Red versus blue, Cougs versus Cougs. The COUGS versus COOGS.
Oh man, I was gonna say that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, they spell their names. I mean, they're both technically Cougars, but University of Houston, for whatever reason, decided to spell it wrong. So
phonetically correct, but technically wrong.
Yeah, Cougars. I guess for Cowgers.
A little bit more history for me. So I graduated from University of Houston, so I'm a Cougar, and then my wife Laura, she which by the way, she's designing the podcast art. So if you're listening to this in the future, you might see different art than is currently on the podcast right now. But she graduated from Brigham Young University, BYU. So so there's a healthy spirit of rivalry, and everybody's a Cougar of some sort.
Cougars and Cougars. I would say there's not a lot of people like me who like graduate from BYU and University of Houston all in one person.
You're a hyper minority, yeah.
Yeah. So if you're a Cougar/Cougar, then leave us a comment or whatever. So
yeah.
Guys, I mean maybe Washington State, I believe, is Cougars. Anyway, we'll leave it there. Guys, we just want to put out a shout out to our loyal listeners and say, if you're listening to us on YouTube, if you're listen to us via podcast, leave us a comment, leave us a review on the podcast. Help us get the Coder Kids podcast out there a little bit more for parents of kids of all ages.
Yeah, definitely. Well,
if you're a kid and you want to listen to our podcast, that's cool too.
Yeah. We'd love to. Yeah, this thing is mostly kid friendly, so.
It's definitely kid friendly.
For sure.
But it's also parent friendly.
Yeah. So let's jump into the actual subject of the day. So this was something that, we've had on the back burner for a little bit, and maybe we should have done earlier. I feel like, this would have been good to do earlier, but it's out now. So you're listening to it right now. It is roughly resources to help that online productivity life. So that could be taking online classes, public school, private school, college classes, whatever. But this is kind of a student-focused edition of resources that can hopefully make you more productive. Just great tools that, like I personally used in college, and different ways to kind of make the most of online.
Yeah, and I can say that none of these tools were even available when I was in college. Maybe a couple, but all I had was Gmail and Microsoft Word, so that's all I needed. But anyway, you can be a lot more productive these days with the tools that are out. So we'll keep that in mind. All right, let's jump in.
Sure.
James, you want to talk about some of the kind of essential things that so we're talking about any kind of person who is studying something like school age from kindergarten through college, basically.
Yeah, the rough it's a rough guideline, but yeah, I think
adults who are maybe taking college classes too.
Yeah, or just trying to learn stuff in general. Like this is for the studier. Yeah, we might do another edition where it's it's focused on adults and productivity tools for work specifically, and there's definitely some overlap. So
right, because like we've used like Trello for business and stuff, and a very useful tool, but not really one that we're diving into today.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll just get all this super obvious stuff out of the way. So for online classes, you need a device to have these classes on. So that's a laptop or a desktop. We have a podcast each devoted to those topics, right? So if you want to, really dive in deep, if you want to build your own desktop, or if you want to kind of select a laptop to purchase, you can go ahead and listen to those. Those are pretty full-featured episodes. One of the things that I think should be fairly obvious, but maybe isn't, which is your internet speed. So a lot of people have kind of got by on pretty low speeds. Netflix has done a great job, and other sources have done a great job at compressing or kind of minimizing their data, so that way you can watch Netflix on a, quite frankly, not a very fast internet connection. But I don't think that really cuts it anymore. I think, when it comes down to being a part of an online class that's live, the thing that Netflix and YouTube have that Zoom doesn't have is, like, how can we compress this data over, like, YouTube has hours to compress data, and they've got huge data centers to make sure they're only giving you the correct information. But with Zoom, with a live video feed, there's just more data coming through, even if you're not able to see it. And so for that, I'd recommend a minimum of 30 megabits per second download. So, the way to test this is just do a speed test. Ookla does one. Netflix does a speed test. You can just type it into Google.
Yeah, Google has one right there. Yeah.
And there's a download speed and an upload speed. Now, if you're ever needing to show your face on screen, or if you're wanting to do a screen share on Zoom or on Discord, or if you want to stream or anything, I say 5. 3 to 5 is kind of the minimum. If you want to stream content like properly, you want to get 6 to 12, but on the upload speed. But that's just like the very, very basics. And you're going to need Zoom. And it's useful also to get familiar with Microsoft Teams, Google Hangouts, and Discord. Although that's pretty gamer focused, it's another good tool. But the essential one is Zoom, just because that's the social standard in 2020.
Right. I don't know who set that standard, but Zoom is the standard.
It just happened. Yeah.
It's just that people were like, "Oh my gosh, I'm working from home. I need something," and everyone was like, "Just use Zoom." So there are a lot of options out there. I mean, my wife has said that like her company, at least in the past, was using GoToMeeting, and she said it was like really terrible. So I guess Zoom is still an improvement over a lot of different things. We really like Discord, but again, it is a little bit more gamer focused or like niche group focused.
They're broadening their appeal. I think they're changing their marketing like right now. But yeah,
but it's like
started with gamers.
It's really like a community type software. Whereas like Zoom, there is no sense of community, and there's also no like text-based or like there's the chat functionality on Zoom is absolutely horrible.
It's really bad. It's like from 1997.
Yeah,
where like there's no filters. Possible. There's no like fonts.
So all I'm saying is the thing we love about Discord, and people can make their own decisions, but we love Discord because it is it has the triple threat. It's got the voice, the text, and the video, and also the ability to share screens. And you can share multiple screens at a time, so it just works really really smoothly. So
yeah. So those are
some people talk about security, but anyway, it's fine.
Yeah, well, and there are different things you can do to be secure, and that'd be getting into the weeds. But let's talk about some of the apps that that are useful.
Well, and before we dive into some of these apps that I know you listed, I just wanted to kind of put in a plug for or just have a conversation with you really briefly about the Microsoft suite of apps versus like the Google suite of apps. Like referring specifically to like word processing and spreadsheets and presentations and things like that parents and kids use in school. I mean, even back when I was a kid in middle school and high school, we would type up papers and I would always use Microsoft Word. But these days, there are other tools out there, namely the Google Suite, that really allow people to also be productive. And I think probably a lot more kids are getting familiar with Google. James, do you own the Microsoft Suite?
I just canceled my subscription, just had a month. But I don't right now. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
and it's totally optional. Well, and here's the other thing is compatibility, right? So let's say like tomorrow I decide, you know what, I want some niche formulas in Excel, right? So there still is no substitute for Excel on the like super tier enterprise level. Like you want very complicated stuff. Anything your kids are going to be doing is going to be in Google Sheets is what it's called. And the moment that I want to transition, I can save a file in an Excel format and it'll be like almost perfectly compatible. So
yeah, see, that's the thing. I haven't installed the Microsoft apps on my new computer here because, I don't want to spend the money, but also like anytime that I get a document and it's like, oh, I can't open this because I need Excel or I need Microsoft Word, I just drag it over to Google Drive and I just open it in Google Drive. So it's kind of like
it's read and write in the Microsoft format. So it's fine.
So it's like, what's the point really of owning the Microsoft suite at this point? So it's kind of interesting. I think over the next 5 years, we'll see what happens even with Microsoft Office. They do have Office 365, which a lot of people, and frankly, schools as well, are probably using for, they have their whole online suite because they saw the competition from Google and other places. And so it is interesting to see how that's changed everything. But anyway, so
I mean,
I guess my recommendation would be everything is online based these days. So probably kids should just stick with Chrome and just get to know that really well.
Yeah, and what I would say is, if you're trying to do anything privacy focused, don't use Google products. So that's the only thing I would say against Google. Like, by using their stuff for free, you are the product. Like, basically they can, if you start getting advertisements for like the subject of the paper you're writing about in school, like, don't wonder why. It's because you typed how cool you think ice cream packaging is. I have no idea. This is just the first thing that came to mind.
Ice cream packaging.
Shout out to Bluebell in Texas, which I haven't had for several years, but I still remember the taste of. It is so yeah. Google they'll kind of use all of their stuff to fund their ad platform, and as long as you know that and you agree to it, then that's fine. Now, if you want things focused on privacy, but you still want free, there is something called Open Office you can check out, but it's not as like streamlined and probably is nice.
I don't know. I mean, that's the thing. Like we do business stuff all the time with Google Drive, and like, yeah, I mean, there's definitely an argument to be made for security, but unless you're working with something that's like truly proprietary,
top secret.
Like my wife's company, they do like oil and gas drilling, and they have like some training courses that are like truly proprietary. Other than that, I don't know. I mean, it's not like Google is allowing you to be hacked. Like they're using your data, but it's not like someone can come in and steal your data. Not easily, at least. So anyway, all right. Well, let's move on. So we got a couple other apps listed here. Before we've got some Chrome extensions as well, but before we dive into Chrome extensions, James, why don't you talk about these next couple of things here that I see you've marked?
Yeah, well, I put OBS Studio first. This one's not necessary. This one is totally optional, but if, let's say, maybe you're a teacher or you're a student that wants to make a presentation, OBS Studio is good for, like, for instance, people watching the YouTube video, and then I'll describe it for, people who are definitely not watching the YouTube video. Like I'm using OBS Studio like as we speak. I'm using the default app and the Streamlabs app at the same time, but I can move my camera around. I have a green screen right now, and I have every week, but I can switch the background images on that, so I could turn on different backgrounds. It allows for you to just tweak your settings and record your own screen. So if you want to make a video to send to someone, like, hey, this is a tutorial about how to install this app or whatever, we use these apps. The best thing is that they're free. They're very full featured, and like they're the premium version. It's like the premium version is the free version. And so anyway, it's one of those things that's truly free and is truly really good to use. Again, you don't need to use it, but it makes you kind of like a little bit more astute user, and is nice, especially if you're recording videos or doing any kind of projects.
Yeah, I mean, OBS Studio is really like the standard that people use also for like gaming and streaming. And so if your child is into that, especially, it makes sense for them to just get familiar with it and comfortable with it. It's a great tool that, again, is totally free. So can't beat free.
That is for sure.
Let's see. Well, do you want to dive into some of these other ones? I'm not totally familiar with everything that James has put on here, so
I put a lot of stuff on there. There's an app. There's another Chrome extension that kind of correlates to this, but it's called Pointer Focus. It's like $12. There is a free version, and there are other apps out there. But if your child is like really used to using a tablet, but not necessarily like a desktop computer or a laptop computer, and they have trouble seeing like where the mouse is at a given time, then this app helps because it just puts a little yellow halo on it. I'm sure you've seen it on videos on YouTube. Tech tutorial YouTubers will have that pretty commonly. There's another Chrome extension that does the same thing, but you can put like Thor's hammer as your cursor, which is what I have now. But lots.
That sounds more distracting.
It's on brand, Jeff. It's on brand. That's what matters. So
well, here I'll dive in and
yeah.
I mean, what are your thoughts about like using an ad blocker, James? Do you have an ad blocker?
Okay, so I should probably tell you about the browser that I'm using, because it is an ad blocker. So I use Brave, which is basically like Chrome but better. That's basically the shortest way to describe it. But the whole thing blocks ads. You can turn off the ad blocking feature, for instance, if it breaks a website. But Brave also enables you to donate money to the creators of a website to kind of mitigate ad blocking. So it tries to be socially conscious while still blocking ads.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, if you're using normal Chrome, like me, which I know James will tell you Brave is best, but most people I would say most people use Chrome.
Yeah, it's the standard right now.
And, maybe use Microsoft Edge. I mean, I've heard Microsoft Edge is great, but, all my data is already with Google. So anyway, I'm using Chrome. I've got AdBlock on there. So AdBlock is just, I don't know. I think it's the standard, but it's pretty great. So I would recommend it. The thing I like about it,
we don't have ads on our website, so that's kind of nice.
Not yet.
Not yet, right? We're right. Like we'll see if we keep recommending this in the future. But.
Yeah. But the thing I like about it is that if you go to a site and they say like, oh, you have to have ads enabled to visit the site, then you can use the pause button. So it's basically like pause for now.
Yeah.
And then the next time you go back, if that's like a month later, it will have turned it back on. So it's just, I like that feature because you can like temporarily pause it. So you can like read an article, but then you can turn it back. It automatically turns it back on. But
yeah.
Anyway, yeah, that's one of the ones. I mean, I do highly recommend an ad blocker for kids.
I think especially for kids. I mean, let's be honest.
Because sometimes they can be of questionable content. Ads can be of questionable content.
I mean, just as an example, once upon a time, I was in one of our classes, and we were teaching typing, and there were just Anheuser-Busch ads. Right? Yeah. And, like, these are kids in a Christian private school, and I don't care what school your kids need to be going to. I don't think they should be getting ads for beer at 8 years old. So like I'm
right.
Yeah. So whether or not they drink later, whatever, but they don't need ads right then. And so it allows you to a little bit more control the flow of information in your own household. And I think that that's something we want to encourage for parents, right? Something that you might probably want. And I would also say, socially, be conscious of creators whose work you use and maybe think about contributing to them. And now, because we are, it's 2020, it's not the very early days of the internet. There are alternative ways to support these creators, like Patreon. Some have a direct PayPal link. Sharing their content is kind of a form of payment, which we would obviously appreciate. But be conscious. If you're getting value from something, like try to give back. But sometimes things are posted for goodwill on the internet, and so anyway, that's just a social note.
Well, let's jump into a couple more of
Sure.
these things. I thought this one was interesting. Blocksite. I actually have one that is similar that I can talk about after Blocksite. But do you want to just explain what Blocksite is?
So Blocksite and similar ones. There's one called Freedom, but there's it's basically a Chrome extension, and all Chrome extensions work in Brave. So that's another reason I plug Brave.
That's nice. Yeah.
Yeah, like I would not use Brave if I didn't have access to the extension library. But what it does is it basically says when you press start, you can set a timer. So as long as the timer is running, it's not going to let you go to certain websites. Now you can put in whatever website you want, okay? And it will basically just say like, no, you're not supposed to be doing this right now. And that helps if you, as a parent or your kid gets easily distracted by YouTube or Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or the New York Times or whatever that you're into. But it also allows you to pause that and kind of find a way around it. So it's not foolproof, but it does help people that want to be focused for a certain amount of time. And it helps kind of keep, that's what it does. You can also set a redirect. So this is kind of a cool feature where, and this is still the free version I'm talking about, so you can buy the premium, but all of these features are under the free version, which I use. And so I'm not going to name the politician, but I have, when I'm going to a site like YouTube and I've enabled this thing, I kind of want to punish myself as an adult for that. So what I do is I go to my least favorite politician. I found a GIF of them saying the word no. And if you meet me in person, I'll tell you who it is. But so my least favorite politician saying no. This person is quite old, and it just kind of disturbs me to look at this. And so I very quickly navigate away. But that's how I use it in my own life. A little bit comical. It might be more useful just to redirect back to whatever the school page is or whatever you're supposed to be working on. But it's a nice way to kind of break the habit. Because,
I've used this app. It has a similar function. I could see, definitely if you're working with kids, there are actually some pretty good like web management tools, and Blocksite might be one of those. I would definitely recommend having parental controls on your kids' internet. Especially, especially when they start hitting like puberty age and stuff. But another conversation for another time, I guess. But, one of the websites that I really like is or one of the extensions I really like is called Switcheroo. Same thing as what James was describing, the ability to basically, if you go to one website, it'll redirect you to another. So I've used that in the past for if I feel like I'm on social media too much or something like that. Sometimes you're just not even thinking and you're just like, I'll just go to Facebook. You click on Facebook and it automatically just redirects you to another website of your choosing. So I used to I really like the Wall Street Journal. So I would just have Facebook redirect me to the Wall Street Journal because it was like, well, if I'm going to be looking at Facebook for weird stuff that my friends post, then I may as well go and read the Wall Street Journal, which is stuff worth actually reading. So anyway, that's just another tip kind of along the similar lines. Next one we have on the list is Grammarly. Yeah. And I know exactly what that one does, although I don't use it personally because I feel like my grammar is fine. James thinks that it's not, but
so I think
it's really fine.
I think what happened was in elementary school, I had a teacher that taught me how to use commas incorrectly because I'm always putting them in the wrong places. And so I basically use Grammarly just for comma placement correction. And over the year and a half that I used it, unfortunately, I didn't use it in college. Probably should have. I've I've learned where to put commas properly. So whether I'm using it or not. So it's nice that it like helps you fix it. But then to me, I feel like it also teaches me. So it's kind of like spell checking, but more. There's sometimes that it's wrong, but it's a free tool. You can get the premium version. We're not endorsing this tool, but like I like to use it. It helps me write slightly better emails, just comma placement. And so again, it's also teaching me as it's also helping me, look more like put together. Like I want to be put together. This is helping me learn and also be more put together at the same time.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's pretty useful.
Straightforward.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about some different tools that I think are useful for reading. There's a lot of kids out there who struggle with reading, and the interesting thing is, like, we have the perspective, I guess, that if you don't know how to read, I mean, look, reading is a super important skill, and I hope that your child is a good reader. But there are a lot of kids out there who really, really struggle to read, and I've taught them. I've taught fourth graders who are reading at a kindergarten level, and I worry about those kids. It's been years since I've taught them, and they're probably in 10th or 11th grade now. Some of them are even in college for their first year, and I worry about their ability to succeed in college, even though reading is a struggle for them. They probably have some kind of undiagnosed, mental thing that kind of prevents them from reading well. There's a couple of things that I would recommend that they do, namely practice reading. But anyway, there's this tool that James pointed out here called Read Aloud Text to Speech. Is that what it's actually called, James?
That is literally the name of it. Yeah.
Read Aloud Text to Speech. Yeah, very literal.
Yeah.
But the great thing about one of these tools is just the ability to take something that you're reading, if it's a really long piece of text, and turn it into speech. Now, I just want to put a plug in for this, because when I was in college, I studied political science, and they would just give us like journal articles. And a lot of times our homework was like, read these 3 or 4 or 5 journal articles and political science, and they were so long and arduous to read. And reading is like I said, reading is a really important skill, and there are people out there who are much better readers and much worse readers than I am. But my point is, I was always walking back and forth up to campus, walking around town and doing stuff, and I just feel like, how useful would this have been if I could have figured out a way to convert that PDF or that text into speech and put it on my phone and just listen to it as I walk around. So
I'll tell you, I actually did do that in college. So that's the story I was going to mention. And I will say, so I'm a history major, philosophy minor. So let me tell you, I was doing some reading, and there are 1 or 2 majors that will cause you to read more. I think, like, if you're doing any kind of like English major, that stuff is more likely to come up. But yeah, so what I did, it was on my phone. You can use the voiceover feature. It was originally designed for blind users of iPhones, and that was something that was really useful, because I got to read quite long amounts of text, and it was able to keep my interest. So I got very familiar with Siri's voice. And then in addition to that, I think it can be useful when someone is learning to read. Instead of using it as a replacement, I think it can be kind of a scaffold and a support. So it helps you like just comprehend more. So instead of just reading the words, hearing them at the same time as reading them increased comprehension. The thing that increased comprehension most for myself was when I would read something and then speak it aloud, right? So then I'm thinking about how it's sounding as it's coming out of my mouth. That was by far the highest for comprehension, but that takes a lot of effort.
But very slow.
Yeah, very slow and takes quite a lot of effort. If you get used to this over time, you can really, really speed up the voice and just burn through content. As an adult, I use this for kind of boring legal documentation. I'll kind of crank up the speed, just stare at the screen and listen and just like chew through text.
Yeah, well, this is the other thing I was going to say is your next one here on the list is Sprintreader.
Yeah.
Sprintreader, which also has a website, sprintreader.com.
Mm-hmm.
And they have a Chrome extension as well. And, I think going back to my example before, I don't think that Sprintreader necessarily, I wouldn't call it a full replacement for traditional reading. But what I would have done in college, and frankly, most of these PDF documents, I don't even think could be converted if you tried to text. Maybe true. If you go to the database online. But anyway, my point is, I would use it as like a first run. So like you use Sprintreader, which basically is just flashing the words one by one on the screen at 500 words a minute, 800 words a minute, 1,000 words a minute, up to, I think
it's up to 1,200 or something. Yeah.
No, on the website, I think it says you can learn to read up to 1,800 words a minute.
Goodness gracious.
So
what's your screen refresh rate?
Yeah, that's a good point. But anyway, 144 frames a second. 144 frames a second would give you
sure
8,640. So you're still set at 1,800. But
it's true.
Anyway, the point is that it's again, I don't feel like it necessarily replaces reading altogether, but it is a tool that's interesting. That if you have a child who gets distracted, like maybe they have ADD, or they're like looking at a book and they're like kind of bouncing around and they have trouble like focusing on the book. It could be a useful tool to make this thing full screen. Just pop the text in there and have them read a chapter of a book or whatever needs to get done. So, I think it's a pretty cool tool that will definitely help you to read faster.
Yeah, absolutely. Quick note about the cursor thing. So if they want their cursor to be a Thor's hammer or a sword or a magic wand or whatever you want, it's called custom cursor, and we'll have the links for all this stuff in the description. But as there's another one for reading. This one's more about eye strain than it is really reading. But if you feel like your screen is too bright and your kid's constantly rubbing their eyes, or they're complaining about dry eyes, maybe this affects adults more than it does kids. But there's one called Dark Reader, and it turns all of the websites that you go to essentially dark mode. So it has like a black background and the text is switched to white instead of black. So again, that's optional. That's something that's also free. I don't think we've mentioned anything that's cost money at this point. A few of these have a premium version, but
sure. Yeah,
good deals.
Good deal. Free is the best price. Let's talk about Google Calendar really quick. Man, as a teacher, I would have given my arm to have kids learn productivity and time management earlier on in life.
That should be core.
People talk about like, we need to teach kids about credit cards, and it's like, okay, great. Like, let's teach kids about credit cards. That's important. But you know what else is important? Like being able to say, I'm going to do my homework from 4 to 5 and be able to sit down and do your homework. That's pretty important, And so just to like have Google Calendar to be able to say like, okay, this is when I'm at school. This is when I'm working on my homework. This is when I'm going to my soccer practice. This is when I'm going out with friends. Just organize your day. It sounds so basic. But just putting things on there to say like, this is what I'm going to be doing at this time would be a big, big helper in anyone's life. Anyone who is working a job that has any kind of, apart from like, kind of menial tasks at, being a cashier at the grocery store and stuff, you don't really need a calendar. But man, if you're doing any kind of productivity, if you're having any kind of meetings,
project management,
any kind of business application like that, like learning that skill of using a calendar is so important.
Well, and here, I'll say this, okay, because some people have tried a budget, some people have tried calendars, and one of the things you'll run into pretty quickly is that your view of how you spend your day and your ambition like will never work the first time. Like it's not going to work. And so it's okay to expect that it's going to take you a little bit to learn to like actually calendar, because there's this like idealized version of James, and I think, okay, I can work like 10 hours and then have 30-minute meals and then like go to sleep immediately after work and like all these things. And what you'll find if you really try to push and stick to those is that like the person that was planning is a madman. And two, like, oh, now that you're at the end of the day, at the end of a plan, it's just as important to look at the plan and say, hey, did that even hold up? Did that make any sense whatsoever? And give yourself credit where credit is due. Say, hey, yeah, this worked out pretty well. It seemed like I stuck to the first 3 events pretty well. Maybe I should reward myself for that. But then say, hey, maybe I need to put in a break here. So sometimes budgeting and calendaring, which are very similar things. One is related to money, one is related to time, but they're essentially the same skill. Because you have so much time to spend and you have so much money to spend. And the skill is just like learning what's real, what's like what your needs are. And then, believe it or not, it actually ends up giving you more time, and it ends up, and like budgeting money gives you more money in the end. Like in the beginning, you're just practicing and failing and practicing and failing, and then you get a success. And so like that's how it works. So
right.
So we don't.
Yeah, I really like it. I really like it a lot. Budgeting money, budgeting time. Those are really important skills. And if you are in college or younger, then yeah, just such an important skill to learn early on. So highly recommend that. Probably should have led with more of a talk about, how to be productive as a child. These are some great tools, but like ultimately all of the Chrome extensions that we just mentioned, you're not going to use any of them if you don't sit down and like try to learn something. So like if you're not motivated at all to get an education, then you're not going to have any purpose for those apps. So,
that's right. We're pre-assuming a motivated student.
That's right. We're pre-assuming that you or your child has some level of motivation to learn. So.
Which is, why I hope in part you're listening to this podcast. You're trying to, get the edge, and I think we all are to some aspect. One of the things that Lars, she works for a budgeting software company, right? So that's why I bring up budgeting, because it's on my mind a lot. And she helps so many people, thousands of people she's helped with their budgeting questions and whatever. And it's really about trial and error. I think I kind of lost my train of thought there. I forgot what I was going to say.
Shout out to Laura though, because she's cool.
Laura is amazing.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and wrap it up. I think that's pretty much all I had to say. I think there's some points there that we can revisit, especially regarding like child productivity, because there's some things that I think are important about motivation and maybe things to consider as you motivate your child. Again, we're just parents of young kids. So maybe I was a teacher, James was a teacher, so we have a little bit of perspective coming from there, but there's a lot that goes into your child's education. We've just touched on some of the technology tools today, but we'll see if we circle back around and touch on these topics.
All right, I got it. It came back to me. Goodness gracious.
And then we're wrapping up.
So, yeah, of course. So, her company that, she doesn't know she works for, but they do X percent of the hours that you work that week is dedicated to self-improvement. And so I think it's like 2 or 4 hours of every week is dedicated to learning how to work better. And that seems like a lot of hours every single week. And certainly it does add up. But, I think it's so easy to get caught up in the grind of like, oh, I need to get this stuff out the door right now. I need to finish my homework. I need to study for this test. I need to do all this stuff. But I think it's also important to upgrade your mental equipment, upgrade your mindset. So that way, not only are you dedicating more time to studying, but you're dedicating it's just like you got a better machine upstairs to study with, right? It's like if you wanted to open a bookshop and you have a printer and it prints really slowly, then you can dedicate more time to printing, but then there's a certain point where you can't dedicate any more time to printing. The printer is running 24/7. You're not making any more books. You've got to buy a better printer. You have to upgrade the whole mechanism, so to speak. Right. So it's also important, and it's tough because thinking ahead and making sacrifices in the present for a distant future is so hard. It's so hard. But it's also super valuable to constantly learn those new skills, because then, version 3.0 of yourself or whatever is so much more effective and happier. And here's a great thing. You feel like you're in control of the day. And if you're not, that you can adapt well, instead of thinking I was on YouTube, I don't know how long, I think we've all been there. And instead you can feel oh, well, I'm going to enjoy YouTube for an hour, and we're going to sit down and we're going to watch some, some crazy DIY building a table videos, even though I'm never going to build a table,
This is just a shout out segment to the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. The 7th habit, which is called Sharpen the Saw. James knew. All right, let's wrap it up.
Stephen Covey. Okay, so this is our time again. So stay subscribed, give us 5 stars, go leave a review, and if you have any kind of feedback or any future episodes that you want to hear about, send us an email, jeff@coderkids.com, james@coderkids.com. We're happy to do that. We'll see you in the next
classes. Fall 2.0.
That's right. Yeah, so we're doing
right now.
Fall classes.
Mini-mester.
That start the week of November 2nd, and they're good.
Go check out coderkids.com. All right. See ya.
Bye.